On the morning of October 11, 2012, Jose Melena, a 62-year-old worker, began his shift as usual at the Bumblebee food factory in Santa Fe Springs, California. This man had worked there for many years. He knew the job step by step and knew every inch of the massive factory, which was always bustling with movement, forklifts, and long rows of machinery. At the heart of it all were giant industrial ovens that operated on steam and pressure, ovens over 30 feet long with heavy iron doors that sealed tightly before the temperature and pressure rose to terrifying levels. Shortly before 5 a.m., Jose was loading carts filled with tuna cans and pushing them into the oven, just as he had done hundreds of times before. The carts moved on rails, pushed in one after another until the oven was full, after which the door would close and the cooking cycle would begin at temperatures exceeding 270 degrees Fahrenheit, 132 degrees Celsius. At a certain moment, Jose entered the oven himself to adjust the arrangement of the carts, and unfortunately, no one saw him go in. Amidst the noise of the machines and the constant activity, his disappearance wasn't noticed. Another worker, unaware that Jose was still inside, closed the oven door and pressed the start button. The door sealed with a heavy thud. The steam began to blast and the temperature started to rise. Jose was trapped inside with no way out, as once the system starts, it cannot be opened until the cycle finishes. For 2 whole hours, the factory operated normally, work shifted, ovens opened and closed, and no one noticed a worker was missing. His spot was empty, but amidst hundreds of workers and machines, no one realized. When the timer finally finished and the workers opened the oven to unload the tuna, what they saw was a horrifying shock. Their colleague's body was inside. Jose Melena had been trapped inside the oven for the entire cooking cycle, cooked alive inside a machine designed to cook fish. Federal investigators described what happened in direct and chilling words. A worker was killed in a gruesome manner inside his workplace. This accident became one of the worst industrial accidents in California's history. An ordinary shift ended in a cruel death no one could have imagined. On February 9, 2019, Daniel Hill, a 54-year-old man, was working a standard shift at the Michigan Seamless Tube Factory in South Lyon, Michigan. He was relatively new to one of the most dangerous tasks in the plant, inspecting the acid tanks. These tanks were huge open vats filled with sulfuric acid heated to about 160 degrees Fahrenheit or 70 degrees Celsius, used to remove rust and deposits from steel pipes before they entered other manufacturing stages. Shortly after noon, Daniel was walking on a catwalk above one of the tanks. The floor was slick with mist rising from the fumes, and the air was suffocating, burning the nose and throat. Around 12:30 p.m., something terrible happened. Daniel slipped and fell directly into the acid tank. His coworkers nearby rushed to him immediately. They managed to pull him out in seconds, but the damage was already done. The acid penetrated his clothes instantly. His skin and flesh were burned the moment they touched the liquid. Witnesses said it was one of the most gruesome sights they had ever seen. They rushed him to an emergency shower and tried to wash the acid off with water, but the hot solution had covered most of his body. His skin was peeling off while he was still conscious and screaming in pain. The ambulance arrived quickly and he was taken to the hospital. Doctors tried to do everything they could, but the burns were deep and fatal. The injury covered almost his entire body, and nothing could undo the destruction. Daniel survived for about 11 hours after the fall, hours of indescribable pain, even with the strongest painkillers. The suffering was beyond human endurance. At 11:30 p.m., he passed away from his injuries. Federal safety investigators later probed the incident, and all these horrifying details were summarized in one cold line in the report. Employee falls into sulfuric acid tank and dies. Months later, Michigan authorities fined the company $32,500 for safety violations. Daniel Hill left behind a family and grandchildren. On the night of July 13, 2012, a 19-year-old man was working the night shift at the Tina's Burritos factory in Vernon, California. The factory produced frozen burritos in massive quantities, and the machines often ran long after the day workers had left. The young man worked in the sanitation department and was responsible for cleaning the equipment after operations ended. His task that night was one of the most dangerous in the entire place, cleaning an industrial grinder used to mash meat and beans. This machine was the size of a small car, equipped with steel blades designed to grind anything in seconds. Just before 9:30 p.m., a fatal mistake occurred. Reports stated that the grinder had not been fully locked out. As the young man leaned his body into the machine to clean it, the motor suddenly turned on. In an instant, the sound of the blades turned into a nightmare. His clothes were snagged, and before he could pull back, his body was dragged toward the spinning metal. He screamed at the top of his lungs for help. Nearby coworkers heard the screams and ran to him, trying to reach the emergency stop button, but the machine was already tearing him apart. His screams were audible over the sound of the grinding itself. Witnesses later said it was the most horrific scene they had ever witnessed. When the grinder finally stopped, it was too late. The young man had been pulled completely into the machine. Paramedics arrived quickly, but there was nothing to be done. He was pronounced dead at the scene. For his family, the shock was unbearable. A young man just starting his life went to work on a normal night and never came home. His final moments passed in indescribable pain inside a machine made to grind food, not human beings. On the morning of February 27, 2013, Jorge Perez, a 26-year-old man, arrived for work at the Golden State Container Factory in Los Angeles. The factory manufactured cardboard and shipping containers, and the floor was filled with giant printing presses, each the size of a truck. These machines used metal rollers and cylinders to press and cut cardboard in seconds, and the sound of metal filled the air constantly. Jorge was used to working around these machines. He knew they were fast and dangerous, and that getting too close could be fatal. But with daily repetition, danger sometimes feels normal. On this day, he was assigned to work on one of the largest machines, which was running normally with the roller spinning non-stop. In a moment, while performing his duties, he got too close. In a split second, the machine grabbed him. The rhythmic sound suddenly changed, and workers heard a strange friction noise followed by screaming. His body was pulled into the rollers. Coworkers ran and hit the emergency stop button, but the machine didn't let go. His body was already wedged deep between the cylinders with a force no human could withstand. Firefighters arrived quickly and began dismantling the machine piece by piece. This operation took about an hour as they tried to reach him without causing further damage. The entire place was silent, the workers standing in shock, unable to believe what was happening before them. Finally, they were able to extract him, but it was too late. The machine had literally crushed him, and he was pronounced in massive foundries spread across the United States. Molten iron is the foundation of the industry, used to manufacture engine blocks, metal frames, and components for cars and buildings. At the Caterpillar Foundry in Mapleton, Illinois, iron is melted at a temperature of approximately 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit, 1,400 degrees Celsius, hotter than volcanic lava and capable of erasing a human body in a single instant. For the workers there, the foundry floor is a place with no room for joking. A single wrong step means a certain end. That is why every worker must move with complete caution every second they are inside. On June 2nd, a 39-year-old man, only on his 5th day at the new job, was assigned a routine task, taking a sample of the molten iron for testing. He turned a massive metal wheel that opened the pouring spout, and the liquid iron began to flow from the vessel. After he finished, he leaned toward the boiling iron. He got very close, but managed to take the sample and return to his supervisor without any problem. But bad luck was waiting for him just moments later. He tripped on the platform, and half of his body fell into the pot of molten iron. He tried to get out or pull himself up, but it was impossible. Half in, half out, and in less than a second, the glowing orange metal swallowed him. Witnesses said what they saw was beyond the mind's ability to comprehend. Death was instantaneous, but his body didn't completely disappear. A part of him remained on the steel floor for the coroner to retrieve. Emergency teams arrived quickly, but there was no hope. The factory was shut down immediately, and investigations began. Questions arose quickly. How could a worker with so little training be placed in one of the most dangerous spots in the factory on only his 5th day? Even harder to accept was that coworkers revealed this wasn't the first time. A year earlier, another worker had died in the same factory in a similar accident. Once again, a human life ended in the most horrific way possible. In places like this, safety isn't just rules. It's a matter. On a normal afternoon, inside the output area of a sawmill in East Texas, the sound of heavy machinery filled the air. The smell of fresh pine was everywhere, and the heat of the work kept the men moving to keep the factory running. Inside, 4 workers were trying to unjam a wood chipper that had suddenly broken down. To free it, they used a heavy steel cable wrapped around the gears, pulling on it and adjusting its position time and again, hoping to clear the jam. The cable was pulled so tight it became like a drawn bow, and suddenly it snapped back, whipping around one of the men. As they tried to pull the cable again to free their colleague, something happened that no one expected. The cable snapped. The energy stored within it exploded in an instant. With the speed of a bullet and the force of a guillotine, it lashed out into the workers' area with deadly precision, striking 5 workers at once. The impact was devastating. 4 of them were decapitated in the same instant. The 5th was slightly luckier. He was thrown clear and suffered a broken leg, but he survived. Those who saw the scene described it as indescribable. One second, their colleagues were trying to fix a jammed machine, and in the next, the place fell completely silent. The bodies that had been standing remained in their positions, but with a fundamental detail missing. The ground was littered with helmets, wood chips, and bodies. When the ambulance arrived, there was nothing to do but save the sole survivor with the broken leg.